Hi, I'm Michael Vincent Davis. I'm a theater major here at St. Edward's University. I'm in the acting emphasis training with David Long and Sheila Gordon. We're in the MMNT, Mary Moody Northern Theater right now. I'm sitting East. And the theater has in it, it's got a shop in which we build all the props on site inside the theater, and we have in the performing arts studio, a separate place where we do the costumes and stuff. We have prop storage elsewhere. And the theater space itself is, well, philosophically, a theater space, it's an empty void in which you can put anything you want to in there.
The theater that we have is a theater in the round, also called an arena, where there's audience on all four sides of the stage, and the actor has to act to each of the four sides. That is a little more personal, so you don't have to be so big, so you have a chance to be more real. It's a lot more intimate with the audience member.
And it doesn't hurt that this particular theater is haunted.
Some of them that they told us was that if you're running out on the track at night, you will see a shadow of a person running, and it will pass you, but you won't be able to make out any other features. It will just pass you and keep running.
Well, the main one that I heard was about a guy who was like shutting down the theater at night, and he was leaving, and he like forgot something, or like he had to go turn off the light, I think, and so he comes back in, and it's in Vom 5, and as he was, and all the lights were off, and as he was, and we leave the ghost light on, and as he was coming out, he like ran into the rope that the boy or whatever hung himself in Vom 5, and he like his like head like ran into the rope or whatever on his way out, is what he said, I guess, happened. So that's just the main one I heard.
It was in the middle of a show. Like actual show, you know, there's audience members and stuff, and there's people lying down on the grid on their bellies, and there's two people on the grid, and one of them, they had their mics on or whatever. One ear has a mic, like they have their headsets. One of the ears is covered, the other ear isn't, and they said that one, they heard like a whisper in their ear, and it said, "What are you doing here?" And it said, "Get out," and it started getting louder. "Get out, get out, get out," and it started getting really louder. And he's freaked out and got up and like ran off, and like, yeah, they both just ran off. They're just terrified.
There's one story in particular where a girl actually was running the spotlight for a show, and she saw a ghost, and she was so terrified that she froze, and then she got out of her hammock, climbed down during the production, which that's unheard of, that doesn't happen, you don't leave your post during a production. She climbed down and she walked into the stage manager's booth and said that she could not go back up there because she was so terrified, and so they had to like honor that because she was so scared. Because the ghosts, they don't care what's going on in the theater, this is their home, you know.
There's not all the ghosts are bad though. There's one particular ghost who changes his seating arrangement, but he's a very dapper, well-dressed gentleman, usually wears a top hat, and he comes to every single premiere. So we like him. He fills seats.
Now this next Vom that we're about to enter is Vom 5, and Vom 5 is where sort of the beginning of all of the creepy supernatural activity begins. And that starts with a group of students hanging out in the theater late at night, playing with the Ouija board, of all things to do in the theater. And they came across this sort of spirit, which of course that happens when you're playing a Ouija board. And they asked what his name is. and the piece goes to S, the piece goes to A, back to S, back to A, back to S, back to A. And everybody's like, oh my god, you know? And he's giving all this personal information about these actors, and it just freaks everyone out. But ever since then, there has been some sort of spirit or force that exists in this VOM that people can't explain, that really kind of is terrifying, but on some level, you know, I hear he likes to be called Billy rather than Sa Sa Sa.
There was a student who was a theater major at St. Edward's. He was very moody, very depressed. He had a stutter, which was part of the reason he got into acting, was to try and get over the stutter, but it never really worked for him. He was never casting in shows because he could hardly understand what he was saying, which is sad, but it's the case. And then finally, some point during his junior year, he actually hung himself off of the grid right up there. And one of the professors, I think it was Gary, I'm not positive, actually came in, and I'm pretty sure he hasn't been in the theater since then.
This is where Billy lives. I feel really weird saying that.
That's part of the reason that they covered up VOM 5s for this show, is because this was a student design show, and the students are the most superstitial out of anyone who works in this department, so they're like, we don't want to go in there. We don't want to deal with that at all.
So this is what's going on in the theater. There's stuff being built. If you see up in here, there's a grid, and there's always actors. Technicians that are up there, and it used to be that we would have people hanging from hammocks to control the spotlights. We recently built towers, but there was always a lot of creepy things that would go on during shows while people were hanging in the hammocks.
See, back in the 70s, the grid was not as it is today. It did not have these platforms for you to walk on conveniently. It did not have these railings in case you missed your footing. No, it was flat. It was all one grid, and you had to just hop from place to place, you know. You had to hold on to these wires and just walk around.
It's really fairly safe, but in the history of the theater, there have been one or two accidental falls from the grid, which people have said forces beyond their control have pushed them over the edge. So it's pretty high up. It's pretty scary.
That's apparently where one of the kids hung himself in the 70s, and some students say that you can hear creaking of the rope, although I've never really heard any of that.
There are times where the grid will just kind of rock back and forth. Rock, 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 and you can't control it, you just gotta hold on.
I was a dresser. I was helping with the actors changing into their costumes for three sisters. And there was one of the props that was in it was this knife that was in a scabbard attached to a belt. It was tied onto the scabbard for safety procedures for this show. And I just wrapped it up. I put it in the ditty bag, which is where we store the props that go with the costumes on the costume rack. And I had just put it in there. I took a step back so I could check it off of my little list that we had done that, because we have to do that every night. And as I took a step back, the same exact knife dropped from the ceiling right to the spot that I was standing not a second before. Right up here, a couple years ago, a swastika spontaneously formed on one of the air ducts. This is a very evil place. If you're ever in a show and you're like backstage or anything, the aura in this place is just creepy because all the lights are off in the theater and there's only have these very dim blue lights to light anything, and it's a corner in a very dark place of a place that kind of freaks a lot of people out anyway. So this is not my favorite place to be. Let's get the hell out of here.
I was just standing here and I'm scared. I just needed something to hold.
Wood for comfort.
And then there is this one glowing orb ghost who I think it was Katie Andrews saw running from bomb top to bomb top one day at a inhuman speed. And you can't jump from here to there. That's a good 25 feet from where I am here at bomb top 11 to right over there at bomb top 1. There's a lot of stuff in the way, and it just jumped over apparently. Just flew.
You never know. You never know if it's just us. It's just this theater folklore that makes us, you know, believe or feel what's happening. But I definitely think that physically there is some sort of force that exists in this theater and maybe every theater. I don't know. There's just, because of its history and because I think the theater is filled with so much imagination and sort of, you know, magic, I think that really is kind of like a breeding ground for supernatural energy, or like a you know, a particular place, you know, like a cemetery, you know, that, of course that's a place where great energy gathers for the supernatural, and I think the theater holds that kind of special energy, magic. I don't know what it is, but the theater is definitely an attractive place for a ghost to hang out.
And right where you're standing, right here, is where I had that goddamn knife dropped on me. There's no ceiling tile up there. There's nothing. I don't know where the hell it came from.